Hey, Brassfax here. This is my range report of the PPQ Q4 TAC. This is going to be a bit different from my review, mainly due to lower round count, and you can kind of more view this as a initial impressions plus. I shot about 700 rounds, which gives me a good baseline to understand how the pistol performs, at least for me, but perhaps not enough for reliability testing or really getting behind and understanding the handgun. This is going to be from the point of view of someone who mainly shoots Glocks, and while I have shot most other pistols on the market, I'll be making a lot of comparison to Glocks. So, lame, I know, but it is what it is. First off, to set the record straight, a friend of mine called this the James Bond gun. This is the James Bond gun. Okay, with that sorted, like I said, I shot about 700 rounds, enough to get an initial impressions plus, but not quite to fully make comments about reliability, etc., etc. That being said, a lot of people have shot this handgun, and I have no doubts that it's incredibly reliable. I had no issues. Getting into the specs real quick, this is a full-size pistol from Walther, or Valta, sporting a 4.6-inch barrel. This model specifically has a front fiber optic, and back when it did have the rear iron sight, the rear iron sight is adjustable for windage and elevation and is blacked out, which is really nice. That being said, as you noticed, replacing the rear, or putting the optic on, replaces the rear iron sight. This sight mount accepts Dr. Leopold, Delta Points, and Trijicon sights, and any optics that use those patterns. It does so in the traditional fashion by using these adapter plates, right? You pick the correct plate for the optic mounting style. Since this is the TAC version, it also has a threaded barrel for 1/2x28 thread pitch for a suppressor. It also includes 3 magazines, 2 of which have the +2 base plate. That is this thing right here. So 15 rounds, and then you got the +2 base plate right here. Some versions of this have a swappable regular mag release. This one has the more European style paddle mag release. That is, you press down on this and it ejects the magazine. It also comes with replaceable back straps, so you can change the side, which has kind of become an industry standard. Okay, with that out of the way, what was my impressions with this handgun? For me personally, it was good, but not quite my cup of tea. Starting off with some of the good, the trigger, as most people know when they look at the PPQ, it's a very good trigger, especially for striker fire guns. I don't actually inherently care about ultra lightweight triggers, but this was a well done lightweight trigger. It carries the whole pistol. When I was shooting the Glock and then switched to this, I noticed an increase in hit rate, essentially, with less effort. This was entirely due to the trigger, I believe. A lighter trigger basically means when you decide to shoot, you have less time to fuck up between when you pull the trigger and the hammer actually drops, or striker in this case. Especially on fast shooting, where trigger prep is expedited significantly. And like I was saying, unlike with some of the other lighter striker-fired triggers on the market, you can still prep this. This is basically a traditional striker fire, like an M&P or a Glock trigger, but lighter. So you got your floppy first stage, and then you hit your wall, and then with some movement and mush, the trigger breaks. So not bad. You can still do good trigger prep. It doesn't just break immediately. Is it a 1911? No, but it's significantly more forgiving than most striker fire handguns, while still allowing good trigger work, like trigger prep and all that stuff for harder shots. Am I more accurate with this? No, not really. It's more of a case of I'm equally as accurate, but it's a lot easier to do. Next up, you may notice in the videos that this gun doesn't really lock to the rear with me. That's not the gun, that's my fault. If you notice this very large mag release, mag catch, I ride my thumb on it, and the gun doesn't lock to the rear. But because I'm just doing a basically evaluation of this handgun, I was not going to change my shooting technique, which is basically death gripping the gun for basically 700 rounds. So I just shot as I normally would, which involved not having a lock to the rear function. So once again, that's not the gun's fault, that's me, but I'm not going to change my technique for a short time. Another aspect, for an MOS style gun, this has some really good and bad aspects. And what I mean with MOS style is optics ready, essentially. So you can put an optics on without any milling. This optic kind of sits very high compared to an M&P core or a Glock 19 MOS, for example. Not only does the optic sit above the slide, because this mount is so large, it's quite thick, this gun also has a decently high bore axis. It's not super high, but it's enough that in combination with this decision making on how the optic mounts, you end up with a quite tall optic setup. This isn't a big deal if this is your first handgun, really, but since most of us and most shooters, even newer shooters, start with iron sights and then move to this, the optics placement is going to take some getting used to. But once again, that's a training thing that can be fixed. But since a lot of us have experience with other handguns, it is a point of contention. And just as a comparison, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll notice the RMR sits in the frame, even though both of these use an optic mounting plate. And especially when you compare the bore axis, you'll notice the PPQ sits significantly higher. That being said, this is probably one of the beefiest optic mounts on the market. Not only does this screw into the frame, like all of them, and have a thicker area, which was a downside as I just mentioned, but it does increase durability because the screws have more to bite into. It also has this little notch down here, which takes a lot of pressure off of the screws for horizontal shear force, which is a big point of how these optics would fail. For example, if you do malfunction clearance with the optic, right? Like rack it off of a shoe or pants via the optic. That's a lot of shear force. Okay, anyway, moving on, the grip, I like it. This is almost my first pistol back in the day, actually, because of how much I liked how it felt in the hand. Not much more to say than that, and other than unlike Glocks, I really don't feel the need to stipple this thing. There is enough grip texture to hold the gun even when I get sweaty at like a range or something. Mag release, as I mentioned, it's ambi, but I just wanted to point out, I'm not sure how righties do this. You really have to break your grip to do this with the thumb. So I've been reloading it how I normally reload my pistols that have right-handed mag releases. I just use my firing finger or trigger finger, I guess, and just come around on top and drop it like that. That way I don't have to significantly break my grip. Rear sights, or the iron sights, were actually quite nice. For the 100 rounds or so that I used it. Blacked out rear, fiber optic front. It's my favorite configuration. I don't like fiber optics or colored rears. I will black them out with a Sharpie. So, and the fact that they're adjustable is super cool because it shows that a company actually acknowledges that unadjustable irons aren't great. They work, but moving on to probably my biggest gripe on the handgun, this thing recoils like butt. I don't know if it's because it's lightweight or what, but this gun loves to climb. I have to work a lot more than any other handgun to keep this gun shooting flat. Maybe I suck, who knows? But for a full-size handgun, I was kind of disappointed how it tracked on target, and it really wanted to climb. Going back to a G19 or a compact 320, I had to do random numbers here, maybe about 30% less work, which is significant. Like you notice this. I would say it kind of feels like shooting plus P. Alright, that's about it. I think if the recoil inputs wasn't so bad, I would actually really like this gun, but it isn't, so it is what it is. Obviously, this was just my take on the PPQ. It's just one person's opinion, and I know a lot of people that really like this handgun. But for me, how the handgun recoils and the other little factors aren't offset by the very nice trigger. Anyways, that's been some brass facts for you. So stay safe.